In Clash Royale, there is a lot of evolutions right now. We have evolutions that are really broken, and we have evolutions that are absolute garbage. So to fix all of that, today I will fix every single evolution in the game with only one change. Hope you enjoyed the video, and let's start off with the 1 Elixir evolutions. Starting off, we have the evolved skeletons. Now, ever since they removed the 4th skeleton, the evolved skeletons just are not good. It was necessary to remove the 4th skeleton because you could split the skeletons previously, and that was just not what it was intended. The evil skeletons are meant to be like a one-man army in a certain way. But the skeletons by themselves in some case scenarios cannot even reach the maximum capacity of 8 skeletons. Most of the times they die before doing anything. So the way to fix this, it is the evil skeleton's first hit time would be reduced from 0.5 seconds to 0.4 seconds. So now those 3 little skeletons and every single other skeleton that they spawn, their first hit would be 20% faster, allowing the evil skeletons to regenerate themselves a lot quicker, making the evolution just a little bit stronger and a little bit easier to use. Next on the list we have the evolved Ice Spirit. So the delay between each blast would be reduced from 3 seconds to 2.5 seconds. So now essentially you would get the damage and the stun slightly faster. This is just mainly because of the 2 nerfs that the Ice Spirit already got to its stun duration, to the point where having a slightly shorter delay between each explosion would make sense. And I would say that overall this would be a buff because you get the damage slightly faster and the stun duration is still exactly the same, so I am definitely believing that this would just be an overall little buff to the evolution Ice Spirit. Next on let's have the evolved Bomber, and enemies can now be hit by the same attack multiple times. When they removed that, they kinda killed the evolution. Now we just have more range, that's really it. Like, having the damage happen to the same enemy multiple times is just so valuable. So either they actually buff the evolution, which I feel like it is the right way to go, or they would just have to buff the actual bomber somehow. But these buffs just really need to happen because Evil Bomber is just kinda useless right now. Next we have the Evolved Zap, and Evolved Zap it is just really good, but when I thought what the hell could I nerf about it, there is essentially only really one thing. A lot of people say that the Evolved Zap is 2 zaps, but you're actually kinda wrong. So now the Evolved Zap second zap would no longer have bonus radius. Would this change anything? Probably not, but a nerf is a nerf, and sometimes that bonus radius can catch something a little bit more to the side, which can be very helpful, so just a little bit of a nerf to the Evolved Zap. Next on the nerf list we have the Evolved Giant Snowball, where now the Evolved Snowball would no longer stun enemies. So actually when it first got released it did not stun enemies, so essentially it didn't reset Sparkies, for example, and now it does. And honestly, thanks for Updude for showing that off, because I would otherwise would have no idea. And because the Evolved Giant Snowball is relatively balanced, this is honestly the perfect nerf to it. Next we have the Evolved Wall Breakers, and they will receive a very small nerf, so their Crown Tower death damage would be decreased from 66% to 50%. In case you don't know, the Wall Breakers have death damage. And what is even less likely for you to know is that death damage actually deals less damage to the towers. Well, if you were unfortunate to kill them very close to the tower, the death damage would connect, dealing 66% of the normal death damage, where now it would only deal 50% of the death damage. So at level 11, the death damage to towers would be reduced from 193 to 145, just making Evo Wallbreakers just a tiny bit less punishing. Next on the list we have the Evolved Bats. Now, bats in general are not as good because minions are a thing, but once minions become more balanced, bats will become better. So I am preparing myself by previously nerfing bats in general, which would be a range reduction from medium to short. So instead of having 1.2 tiles of range, the bats would have 0.8 tiles of range, which would make it slightly harder for the evolved bats to heal more efficiently. So a tiny nerf to the evolved bats, essentially. Next we have the evolved knight, and he's just honestly way too versatile. He can be everywhere, really. So a tiny nerf to his damage reduction is necessary. So the damage reduction while he's moving would be reduced from a 60% shield to a 55% shield, making the evolved knight just a little bit less tanky when he's moving, because he's, again, just too versatile. Next on the list have the evolved archers, and the charge shot max range would be increased from 5.5 tiles to 6 tiles. So honestly, the evolved archers, since they got that little rework, they're just not really that special, honestly. I practically never see them. So increasing the charge shot maximum range would allow the evolved archers to be a little bit more versatile and to get the first shot at whatever they're targeting a little bit faster, which is always really strong. Next have the evolved cannon, and the barrage would now take an additional half a second to deploy. So now you would have to predict a little bit better where the troops that you're trying to hit with the barrage will be, because now the barrage takes a little bit longer to land. And on top of that, this makes the evolved cannon a little bit worse on offense. So hopefully with this nerf, the evolved cannon does not maintain his place as the dominant evolved building. Next we have the evolved goblin barrel, and this is a bit of an overstatement calling this a nerf, but now the fake barrel would always be glowing purple. Like, you know that little effect that the fake barrel has right at the beginning where it's shining purple? Yeah, now it would always have that effect. So now it's pretty easier to understand which one is the real and which one is the fake, which, to be honest, most likely won't change anything. Next we have the evolved dart goblin, and the nerf to the evolution was actually stronger than I expected. So now the amount of hits necessary to increase the level of the poison would be reduced from 4 hits to 3 hits. So now it will only take 3 hits to get that second level of poison, and 6 hits to get the red poison. So now dart goblin will ramp up the damage way much faster, which should make him slightly better. Save the evolved firecracker, and honestly this is just a little bit of a tiny buff, but the recoil of only the evolved version would be increased from 1 tile to 1.5 tiles. I really like when originally the evolved firecracker had bonus knockback when compared to the original one, because I mean, it shoots a way much bigger rocket, so the larger knockback felt reasonable. So giving that small extra back to the evolution would make the evolution just a little bit better. Next we have the evolved musketeer, and now she reloads 1 bullet after 5 seconds, or every 5 seconds. So this means that if you use the evolved musketeer defensively, so use the sniper and they're attacking, so the musketeer is using her regular attack, which she prioritizes over the snipe ability, and after that defense, the evil musketeer could potentially have 1 extra snipe for your offense, allowing for you to have a little bit more strategy with the evolved musketeer, because honestly she's just kinda mediocre. Next we have the evolved goblin cage, and the cage itself would now also have an additional 10% HP. The evolved cage just honestly dies way too easily. Even when it's used correctly, it just most of the times doesn't get value. So honestly, the cage having more HP would just allow the cage to defend slightly better, because even for 1 cycle evolution being this mid, it's honestly surprising. Next we have the evolved Valkyrie, and her HP multiplier would be reduced from an additional 10% to only an additional 5%. I swear to god, the evolved Valkyrie, it is too good. It defends like crazy. And even on offense you have to be careful, because sometimes that tornado could hit your tower, dealing a little bit of damage with as well, so something needs to be slightly toned out, and honestly that HP is just too much. Next on the list we have the evolved battle ram, Now, according to actually one of the Clash Royale's lore shorts, there is supposed to be an evolved barbarian inside the battle realm, so I just have to ask where the hell is he? And because the battle realm is very mid in my opinion, make it have 3 evolved barbarians. It's not like they're going to change that much, honestly, but the extra evolved barbarian could really help a lot the battle realm, because right now he's pretty underwhelming. Next we have the evolved mortar, and now the evolved mortar would just have one little extra where it would spawn one regular goblin at its death. Most of the issue of the evolved mortar is the actual mortar, because most of the times it is very hard to get value. The evolved mortar, on the other hand, because of the goblin, it's easier to get value from the actual mortar, but sometimes it gets countered way too fast. So with this one death goblin, at least you will always get value from your evolved mortar. Next we have the evolved Tesla, and its shockwave stun duration would be slightly increased from half a second to 1 second. So now it would stun for way much longer. The shockwave, in my eyes, even though it does deal decent damage, it just sometimes fails at defending, which I feel like it is the whole reason why I use the evolved Tesla. And because it does not have the versatility of the cannon, neither the cost, I feel like the stun duration should be reverted to what it used to be originally. Next we have the evolved Hunter, and the net attack interval will be reduced from 5 seconds to 4 seconds, hopefully making him a little bit more versatile. With his previous nerf and now the Vine spell being a thing, the evolved Hunter essentially became unemployed, like no one uses him personally. I never see him being used. So hopefully the net attack interval being reduced will help him a little bit. Next we have the evolved Infernal Dragon, and the 4th stage time would be reduced from 20 seconds to 10 seconds. In case you don't know, the evolved Infernal Dragon doesn't have 3 stages, he actually has 4, and the 4th stage deals literally double the damage of the 3rd stage, but because it just takes 20 seconds to reach it, the evolved Infernal Dragon just never makes it that far, so reducing the time needed to reach that stage where you deal insane damage could make the evolved Infernal Dragon way much better. Next we have the evolved Goblin Drill, where now each time it's submerged it would deal regular damage, but it would not knock enemies back. So now the Goblin Drill would essentially deal triple the damage at its evolved form, which would be really great, and would just allow to also take out smaller enemies like goblin gangs, armies, goblins way much easier, because now it would deal damage. Without giving the knockback, characters like Valkyrie would not have that much issue. Next we have the evolved Lumberjack, and the ghost range would be increased from 0.7 tiles to 1.2 tiles, going from short to medium range. So the ghost is holding the axe with both hands, and honestly it kinda almost feels right for him to have bonus range, because the evolved Lumberjack is also kinda weak. You only really see him, at least I only really see him, in the Lumberloon, and that's literally it. So the ghost having more range would allow the ghost to have more value within its time limits. Next we have the evolved Furnace, and when it's at its hot spawn state, the first fire spirit that it spawns would actually have a 0.2 second delay, because when you change from regular to hot spawn, you at your first shot you immediately start spawning the fire spirits. So now you would have an additional 0.2 seconds delay before getting the first fire spirit. Next we have the evolved Baby Dragon, which just got released like yesterday at the time that I am recording, and honestly the speed up to your allies has got to be reduced from 50% to 30%. I have seen the potential of the speed buff and it is just too much. So making the speed buff the same as the speed nerf, honestly, just makes even more sense and makes the evolved Baby Dragon actually balanced. Next on the list we have the Evolved Barbarians. The rage duration that they get would be increased from 3 seconds to 4.5 seconds, keeping the range for way much longer. Actually, the exact same duration as a regular rage. So hopefully this makes the Evolved Barbarians a little bit more versatile when changing from defense to offense, making them just a little bit better. Next we have the Evo Wizard, and the shield explosion splash radius would be increased from 3 tiles to 3.5 tiles. So essentially, when that shield breaks, you have an explosion from the size of arrows around the wizard, pushing enemies back and dealing damage, hopefully making the Evolved Wizard just a little bit easier to use and more consistently gaining value. Next we have the Evo Witch. Personally hated, but on top of healing just with her own skeletons, she would also heal from any other skeleton that it is within a 7 tile range. So if a skeleton it is within just a little bit beyond her range, she still gets the heal, hopefully making the Evolved Witch just a little bit more versatile. Next we have the Evolved Electro Dragon. Now, I really don't understand why this is a thing, but stuns would no longer stop the chain of electricity that he drops. I don't understand why this is even a thing, honestly. So, because he already had so many previous nerfs, him being counterable with stuns just feels ridiculous. Now the chain would only disappear once the Evolved Electric Dragon would be defeated. Next we have the Evolved Executioner, and the axe bonus damage and knockback range would be increased from 3.5 tiles to 4 tiles, just making slightly easier for the Evolved Executioner to actually get value, because in the right circumstances it is just so easy to counter him, honestly. Like, any ranged troop essentially can deal relatively well against him. Next we have the Evolved Royal Giant, and he always felt like a very mediocre evolution, always depending on other evolutions for him to be good. So now the damage of the shockwave would be increased from 81 to 134, the exact amount to kill a spear goblin, hopefully making the Evolved Royal Giant just a little bit better on his own. Next we have the Evolved Goblin Giant, and at its defeat, he would always spawn one regular goblin. The exact same thing as the Mortar. I mean, at 50% he starts dropping stab goblins, so at his defeat he would always spawn one, making it just a little bit easier to consistently get value out of the Goblin Giants. Next we have the Evolved P.E.K.K.A. So, you know that little butterfly that appears whenever she kills something? Well, that is technically what actually heals the Evolved P.E.K.K.A. So now, that butterfly would take an additional half a second to be consumed. So essentially, if P.E.K.K.A. is at 1 HP and she kills something and would get a lucky heal, well, now because it would take just a little bit longer to get the heal, she might not survive. So the heal taking just a little bit longer could be the difference between the Evolved P.E.K.K.A. dying or living. Next we have the Royal Recruits. When their shield is broken, which is when they can start charging, their first charge would only take 0.5 tiles. Every other charge after that would take the usual 2 tiles. This would make the Evolved Recruits just a little bit more reactive, because a lot of times it's very easy for them to get literally 0 value against their matchup, so this buff would make them just a little bit easier to get the value. And trust me, I do not have a favorite evolution, by the way, clearly. Next we have the Evolved Mega Knight, and every 3 attacks he would throw into the air all the enemies hit by his attack. Sometimes the evolution it is just bad, but every 3rd hit throwing every enemy into the air would allow Mega Knight to at least defend way much better, which it is the main place where you want to use the Evolved Mega Knight. So hopefully with this little buff, Evolved Mega Knight becomes a little bit better. And finally we have the evolution that I actually forgot to put in its place, which is the Evolved Skeleton Barrel, where the first barrel would now only pop at 50% HP. So in some situations it could be better, because both barrels, I think if you don't defend them, both the barrels would only pop at the tower, but in some cases where you would actually want the first barrel to be used as in a defensive way, it could be slightly worse because it could be slightly harder to get the value out of that first barrel. But overall, I believe this would be a very small buff to the card because I just really don't see it getting a lot of value most of the times. And there you have it, every single evolution fixed with only one change. What are your thoughts on the changes? Write your opinion in the comments down below, trust me, I will read them, and I'll see you all on the next video.